What does it mean to be truly rich when those you love most turn their backs on you? In the sprawling estate of Harold Grayson, a billionaire whose name once commanded boardrooms and headlines, the answer began to unravel on a cold November evening. The mansion, a monument to his success, stood silent, its halls echoing with memories of a family long fractured. Harold, now 78, sat by the fireplace, his trembling hands clutching a photograph of his 3 children, Amelia, Victor, and Claire, taken decades ago when laughter still filled these rooms. They had left him, one by one, chasing their own ambitions, nursing old grudges, and blaming him for their mother's absence. Tonight, he faced his final hours alone, but the legacy he left behind would shake them to their core. Harold had built his empire from nothing. Born to a factory worker in a small Ohio town, he clawed his way up through sheer grit, turning a single patent into a tech conglomerate that reshaped the world. But success came at a cost. His wife, Eleanor, grew weary of his endless work, the missed anniversaries, the promises broken. She left when the children were young, and though Harold tried to fill the void with wealth, his children grew to resent him. Amelia, the eldest, saw him as a cold opportunist who valued profit over family. Victor, the middle child, chased his father's approval but never felt enough. Claire, the youngest, simply drifted away, her heart hardened by years of neglect. By the time Harold's health began to fail, they had all moved on, their visits dwindling to none. The loneliness was a slow poison. Harold's wealth could buy private nurses, gourmet meals, and sprawling estates, but it couldn't buy time or love. He wrote letters to his children, pleading for reconciliation, but they went unanswered. Amelia was busy running her startup in Silicon Valley. Victor was climbing the political ladder in D.C., and Claire was traveling the world, posting curated glimpses of her freedom online. They assumed their father's fortune would be theirs one day, a reward for enduring their fractured childhood. Harold, however, had other plans. In his final months, he met Maria, a hospice nurse who cared for him not as a billionaire, but as a man. She listened to his stories, laughed at his dry humor, and held his hand when the pain grew unbearable. Maria had no family of her own, having lost her parents young, and her kindness came from a place of genuine empathy. Harold saw in her the daughter he wished he'd raised, one who valued connection over ambition. One night, as the fire crackled and his breath grew shallow, he confided in Maria about his will. "I've made mistakes," he whispered, "but maybe I can still do something right." When Harold passed, the news reached his children through a lawyer's cold email. They gathered at the mansion, not for grief but for greed, expecting to divide a fortune worth billions. The air was thick with tension, Amelia's sharp glares, Victor's forced charm, Claire's distant sighs. The lawyer, a stern woman with a leather briefcase, read the will aloud. Harold's estate, his company, properties, and liquid assets was not theirs. Instead, he had left everything to a foundation in Maria's name, dedicated to funding orphanages, schools, and hospitals in underserved communities. A single clause addressed his children. "To my children, I leave my love, which I failed to give you in life. May you find wealth in what truly matters." The room erupted. Amelia slammed her fist on the table, calling it betrayal. Victor paced, muttering about legal battles. Claire stared out the window, her silence louder than their rage. They had assumed their father's wealth was their birthright, but Harold had seen through their absence. He knew they hadn't come for him in his final days, and he refused to let his legacy fuel their selfishness. Maria, unaware of the will until that moment, wept not for the money, but for the man who had trusted her with his purpose. Weeks later, the siblings sat in a diner, their anger softened by exhaustion. Amelia admitted she'd envied her father's drive, but hated how it stole him from her. Victor confessed he'd spent years chasing a shadow, hoping to prove himself. Claire, tears in her eyes, said she'd run from the pain of feeling invisible. For the first time, they spoke not of money but of memories, the good ones, buried under years of resentment. They realized Harold's final act wasn't punishment, but a mirror, forcing them to face their choices. The foundation thrived under Maria's care, building schools in places Harold's children had never seen. Amelia, Victor, and Claire didn't contest the will. Instead, they began to visit the projects it funded, meeting children whose lives were changed by their father's last gift. Slowly, they found something money couldn't buy: purpose. They started working together, not for wealth, but to honor the man they'd misunderstood. Harold's death had left them empty-handed, but his legacy gave them a chance to rebuild what they'd lost: a family. In the end, Harold's billions didn't go where anyone expected, least of all his children. But in stripping them of his fortune, he gave them something greater: a chance to rediscover love, not in bank accounts, but in each other. As the mansion stood empty, its halls no longer cold, the world beyond its walls grew warmer because of one man's final, selfless act.